Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by JetBrains. I'm Paul Everett, PyCharm Developer Advocate, and I'll be your host. The topic for today's webinar, let's build a fast, modern Python API with FastAPI. Today we have Michael Kennedy, founder of Talk Python Training, host of the Talk Python to Me podcast, co-host with Brian Ocken of the Python Bytes podcast, co-author with Matt Harrison of the Effective PyCharm book, all around lovely human being. Welcome, Michael.
Well, Paul, thank you for having me here. It's always great to be on the PyCharm stream now. It has been just the webcast, but you guys are live streaming. How exciting.
Yeah, in fact, you have walked right into my prepared ad lib number one. You're a longtime friend of the webinar. I believe this is number 6. Want to take a guess at what year was your first one?
Oh, a guess. Oh, my gosh.
You're not going to get it. Give up.
Yeah, 2018.
Off by 4 years.
What?
Your first webinar with PyCharm was 22 months before I joined JetBrains.
Wow.
How about that?
That's incredible.
Now, speaking of which, you recently, the royal you, Talk Python to Me podcast, recently passed a significant podcast milestone. Share that milestone with us, along with your current rank as a technical or developer podcast.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, thank you. So I've been doing the Talk Python to Me podcast for about as long as I guess I've been doing JetBrains webcasts. And, you know, I was looking through the numbers of downloads and stuff recently, and I just realized we passed 20 million downloads for people listening to the show. And at least according to the iTunes charts, which a lot of the different things like Overcast and other players pull from, we're the number 2 in the world developer podcast. Those pesky JavaScript people are beating me, but
yeah,
I'm on their heels.
Barbarians.
I'm on their heels. We're gonna get there.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk FastAPI for Rust endpoints. You have a brand new Talk Python training course. Is that right?
I do.
Just came out recently?
It did. I'd say it came out about 3 weeks ago, actually, and I'm really excited. Like, I've been waiting for something like this to catch fire. Not the course, but the technology.
Yeah.
You know,
so that's kind of my question is, tell us about the course, but also tell us how it got on your radar.
Yeah. Radar and then course, I think, makes the most sense. So what I've been wanting is a modern Python web framework. I mean, all respect to Django, to Flask. A lot of my stuff's built in Pyramid. I like all of those frameworks. But what I want to be able to do is write def async some method, use type hints in a way that are meaningful, and write modern Python code that, tooling that honestly like PyCharm brings together, that really just makes that experience feel like the best that it can be with all the cool features of Python. And I looked at Japronto, I looked at Sanic, I looked at a bunch of these things, and they all seem to spike and then drop in terms like, oh, this is amazing, but it's not amazing in some ways, or it's amazing, but it doesn't work on Windows or whatever. And, FastAPI seems to be the one that really has the traction around this kind of stuff. And it's been around a little over a year and a half. There's a hilarious joke that Sebastian Ramirez, the creator of FastAPI, put onto Twitter. There was apparently a job posting saying you have to have 4 years of experience with FastAPI. He said, well, I can't apply for it. I only created it a year and a half ago. So that's all the experience I got, right? So anyway, I've been waiting for something like that. And now that that's both come along and seems to have legitimate traction, I'm like, all right, now how do I was super excited about it. How do I spread that joy? Well, let me create a class and show other people how neat it can be.
And you said experience, and I think that's part of the reason it's gotten meteoric rise. Is it isn't just that here's a pile of code. You go to the website, it explains what it is, it explains why you should care, and then documents the crap out of it and has batteries included for everything, right?
Yeah, it's really, really neat. And it's called FastAPI, but what's interesting is it has all the mechanisms and capabilities to be on par with Flask or Django or Pyramid in that it renders templates, dynamic templates like Jinja, or I added Chameleon recently as an open source project extension. And It does static files and all those kinds of things, but better.
Yep. And you don't have to assemble a bunch of half-maintained add-ons, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Okay. Very good. Let's have some fun. Get back to getting started for the webinar. All right. We'd like to make this webinar as conversational and live as possible. So should you have any questions or problems during the webinar, feel free to ask them. I don't know if it's that way or that way, but ask them at any time during the presentation using the chat in YouTube. I'm looking over at it right now. We'll have a few pauses during the webinar where Michael will answer your questions. I will answer some of the questions as well right there in the YouTube chat. If they're really hard questions, I'll save them for Michael, who will pause every now and then and say, hey, Paul, you got any questions? Please don't wait until the end of the talk. Ask your questions as soon as you have them. Usually the most common question is this thing being recorded? This used to be funny when it was GoToWebinar a couple of months ago. And I would always joke that in 5 minutes, we're going to have someone ask, is this thing being recorded? It happened every time for the last 4 years. I've done 20, 30 webinars. Well, it's not funny anymore because, of course, it's being recorded. It's YouTube, so it'll be available immediately at the end of this, basically. All right, so now that we're all set, Michael, give us a walkthrough of FastAPI. Over to you.
All right, sounds good. Well, can you guys throw my screen up? Yeah. Let's do that. So I gave you a little bit of an introduction to FastAPI, why I thought it was neat and powerful, right? It brings together all these cool features of what I consider modern Python. That's async and await, that's type hints, that's Python 3.6 and above, so F strings, all those kinds of things. Yeah, so can you folks switch over my screen? Flip that on.
Yep.
And then I will show you. So I'll give you all who are watching just a quick rundown. We're going to talk really briefly about FastAPI, and then we're going to build a real simple little like hello world API. And then what we're going to do is we're going to interact with some live data, some live external APIs, kind of a mashup type of thing. Our API is going to consume other APIs that is going to... that's what we're going to ultimately build.
Yeah, hold on. Sorry.
Yeah. How's it going over there, you guys? I see my screen, but I know it's not in the stream.
Okay, it says that we're sharing your browser right now.
Yeah, can you see it?
Right.
Now.
Here we go.
Now
Cool.
It's in the stream. Okay, perfect. So welcome to FastAPI. This is a great framework that Sebastian Ramirez has created, as I already said. So if you go over there, documentation is great. The website is great. I'd like to call your attention to the top right. It's small. It might be hard to read. So 24,000 stars. You might think, well, Michael, if I go to Django, they have 50,000 stars. And if I go to Flask, it has 51,000 stars, or approximately, right? I'm not pulling it up now. Well, those are 10 years old. This is a year and a half old. The energy around this framework in particular, as I said before, is really, really high. So you can find FastAPI over here, or you can pip install FastAPI. The reason I'm excited about it, as I said, is it takes advantage and brings in all these modern features, type hints, async and await, ASGI servers. You've all heard of WSGI, WSGI, Web Service Gateway Interface servers. That's how all the Python frameworks have interchangeable backend G-unicorn, UVicorn type servers. Those don't work for async and await, so you need an asynchronous server gateway interface. So you'll see that there's a very nice one associated with it here. Data classes and Pydantic, those are really nice ways to exchange and validate data. If you want documentation, what you do is you write a function that is an API, then it is documented automatically. That's really nice. It has really interesting ways of testing with PyTest and rich editor, read PyCharm support, partly because there's a cool plugin for PyCharm, partly because of item number one here, type hints. One of the reasons I like type hints more than anything is they make the editors come alive, right, Paul? I mean, that's one of the beauties, is it knows what you're doing and the editors can help you.
Indeed. And this is something I want to follow up with you a little bit about later. This is you said modern
Yeah.
as one of the things that attracted you. And this is like showcase number 2. After async, I think this is the modern.
Yeah, that I totally agree with that. Pydantic is a little in there, but like Pydantic's, it's hard to disentangle that from type-ins. All right, so what to build? I'm sure you all are dialing in, connecting from wherever in the world. It may be beautiful, like over here in the mountains, like where Paul is. It may be super wet in the Pacific Northwest, where I am. And if you're going to go outside, you might want to know, do you need an umbrella? Yes or no? So our goal during this webcast is to write an API that you enter a location. It will tell you umbrella, yes or no. Okay? But it will use live data and it'll determine if it's raining. Now, it's not going to use a forecast. It's more like if I'm going to go out in the next 10 minutes, not if I'm going to go out forever. Maybe we could build a little IoT thing and it just is like e-ink and it sits on our desk and it just shows an umbrella or a hat. That's it. And it just constantly updates. And we're going to build the back end to something like that. And are we going to use real data? Yeah, I built this thing over here at weather.talkpython.fm that returns actual weather data, like real weather data. So in Portland, let's see, we were in New York, and why the weather would be right now. Apparently it's clear but quite chilly. So we're going to work with this API and basically consume this API in our API to answer the question of whether or not you need an umbrella. So let's just see really quickly, what does a minimal fast API look like? And then we'll go build that and maybe take some questions if there are any. So you've seen this with Flask, and I find it interesting that a lot of the modern, let's say just newish, modern or not, it doesn't really matter. The new-ish APIs, so many of them adopt something that is Flask-like, but not necessarily Flask, where you create a thing, the thing also has decorators, and then you sort of call run on it, right? Responders like that, Flask, obviously, a bunch of the others. And this is kind of like that, but not exactly. A little more API-ish. So we're going to create it. You could call it an app, but if you're creating an API, I feel like API might be better. You write a function. It can be asynchronous or not, and it'll do either. And you say API dot, instead of route, like you would in Flask, you speak in HTTP verbs. You can do a route and do multiple verbs and so on, but here you say dot get the URL, and then you don't call API.run. Use an ASGI server, UVicorn, which is a fantastic production-ready server that you can use. So this is an entire application. I wouldn't recommend structuring it like this necessarily for a large one, but for a small one, this kind of shows what's involved. Paul, any questions?
Quite a few. A mixture of high level and low level. So I'll start with kind of a high level one. There was a question about Django and kind of a common pattern in things that you do with Django, multi-applications and e-commerce systems and stuff like that. Is it logical, you think, to try and do something like this with FastAPI? I mean, it kind of brings in the whole server-side rendering, templating question as well, as being just an endpoint.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like Flask in that you kind of just render it. You say, I'm going to render a template in code for the template side. I think it makes sense. I believe, I've never tried this, so I don't remember exactly how it goes, but I believe you can mount sub-WSGI applications.
Ah.
I think so. I think you can say, here's a WSGI app and route like /blog to this Flask sub piece or something along those lines. I'm not totally sure, but I think it works that way.
Some of you in chat that might have, we have some superstars in chat. So some of you in chat might be able to follow up and give a better answer on that. Going down a little bit further, I'll say the magic words for you as a Mongo person. NoSQL and also migration tools. Things that you get from the big frameworks.
Sure. You get them here as well. You just get them somewhere else, right? So MongoDB, certainly. You could talk to MongoDB with this. You would use, something like Mongo Engine, or I think Micro Mongo or Tiny Mongo, I think it is, for the async support. There's also Motor that comes from the MongoDB people. That is the official async driver of MongoDB.
All right.
So a lot of those plug in. In terms of migrations, I mean, you don't really have migrations in Mongo, but in SQL Alchemy you do. And I would just use Alembic. So SQL Alchemy plus Alembic plus FastAPI. And I believe in 1.4, they're working on an async version of SQL Alchemy as well.
All right, cool. And for those of you not doing NoSQL, but might be using Postgres or something, there's blazingly fast.
Yes. What's it called?
Give a quick mention of that.
Yeah, there's an async Postgres driver package as well. And, any chance you get to use an async thing, if you can just type the word async here and then await on your thing, and all of a sudden you get 100 times scalability, like that's the thing you probably want to type. So, when you're evaluating these external frameworks to bring in, if they're all things being equal, there's an async one. Choose that.
Okay, last question for now. This gets low level dorky dork. As far as alternatives for the loop, or the server, UV, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, UVcorn and GUnicorn. What out of the box the FastAPI come with? What alternatives does it support? And I'm particularly interested on the UVcorn because I believe that's an HTTP 2 alternative.
UVcorn is not HTTP 2, which is sad. However, I'm not sure it matters. Let me explain a couple things. One, UVcorn doesn't come out of the box. You got to pip install it with it. And there's no way to say API.run. If you go over here, so awesome ASGI, do a little magic.
Sorry to take you on a detour.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
This was the first question that was asked.
So if you come down here to servers, here's the story of the ones, at least according to this awesome list, right? I mean, it may not be extensive. So this one is really nice, but it supports HTTP 1. There's Hypercorn and there's Daphne.
Hypercorn, that's one. Sorry.
Yeah, this one also supports WebSockets. And I said, I don't think it matters. And so why do I say I don't think it matters whether it does? Because typically the deployment looks like Nginx, then GUnicorn, and then UVicorn worker processes. Sure. And so the HTTP 2, I believe would be handled by Nginx. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think so. So a lot of those things, like for example, you can serve static files for development, but you should really just serve them out of Nginx and never touch FastAPI at all. So in the production side where it really matters, I think you would not let it get that far. But if you wanted to just directly deploy this, like having HTTP2 here might be cool.
Thank you for bringing this screen up. Just independent of FastAPI, there are things going on in Python land for web stuff. And it's a little bit under the radar, and that page lists a bunch of the things that could be important for people trying to do modern web on Python.
We're going to be working with that in a minute as well.
Okay. All right. Onward, back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Back to me. Perfect. I think it's time to build. So, I don't know if you guys saw this article, I think it was about a year ago by Mark Andreessen called It's Time to Build. And actually not quite a year ago, the beginning of the pandemic. And what a neat article. Hopefully you guys are going to build something awesome with this knowledge afterwards. So let's just go and build something here, huh, Paul?
All right.
I made my screen small and it ginormousized my PyCharm. So what I'm going to do.
Oh, by the way, is this on the M1?
This is on the M1. How about that, huh? Yeah, so this is my Mac Mini M1 with 16 gigs RAM. So we actually did a fun live stream last week exploring this for Python. For example, there's weird things like you have a terminal and you have a Rosetta terminal because sometimes you need to install stuff that depends on the, say, Intel platform wheels of Python. And we're going to go down that route this time as well. So I'm just going to go to my desktop. Make an umbrella folder. I'm going to create a virtual environment, and everyone should do this. Everyone should have one of these. I have a thing that creates a virtual environment, activates it, and then make sure it has the latest pip. Because do you know what happens? About 95% of the time, spread out throughout the year, when you pip install or you create a new virtual environment and you try to pip install something, it tells you it's out of date. So just update it every time. I wish Python did this on its own. Okay, anyway, so it is. And then we're going to have a main.py in here. And let's go ahead and add a requirements.py. And then let's open this over here into our lovely PyCharm. Okay, it's coming to life. It may decide there's an interpreter. Let's see. It has found the umbrella. Fantastic. It's a new sort of auto-detecting thing in the latest release, I think. And it knows the virtual environment should be ignored, which is pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and run this and make sure that we're capable of running nothing. Fantastic. We're running on Python 3.9.1, I believe. Did I name it that? Paul, how do you let me put that extension on there? All right, so in this thing, we're going to have FastAPI, and we're also going to need UV acorn. Like you saw, there's other options. So let's install those requirements. All right. Now, PyCharm does think those are misspelled, but you know what? I happen to know they are not misspelled. So we're going to tell them it's not. All right, that's great. Now let's just do really quickly, let's bust out that example. So import FastAPI, import UV acorn, API equals FastAPI. See how fast that type hints work? It's like, gosh, it's like a joy. Okay, we do a get to slash. And we'll just do slash for now. Def index. We're going to return some data. This will be message. It's going to be hello world. And the status, I don't know, I'm just making up stuff at this point, is okay. Yep. Whoops. And then what I'm going to do is I wanted, when I first started this framework, I wanted to say run. And it didn't like it. So what I found was there's no built-in run. But I can UV acorn run the API. All right, run it. And look at that. We have our API built. So part of the name of FastAPI is not that the APIs themselves are fast. However, if we look, you'll see that it is one of the fastest Python web frameworks available, on par with Node.js and Go, which is fantastic. But the other part of FastAPI is I can build an API quickly. The fast applies to the developer speed, not the execution speed, right? Okay, so this is our simple example, but let's go and make this a little more realistic, okay? All right, so maybe I'll save this for you. I'll call this main hello, not hacker hello, regular hello. And we're going to evolve this one, and I'll just leave that one there for you all. Okay. So this one, what we're going to do is this little jam everything into one file world. This is fine for documentation. This is fine for a cool little 25-minute PyCon presentation. But for a real app, you're going to be hating life if you put everything into one file, right? So let's do this. Let's do a little organization here. We're going to create a directory called API. We're going to create a directory called views. We're going to create a directory. Let's go with that for now. And over here, this is going to be where I'm going to put my random stuff. I'm going to have home views. And over here, I'm going to have, let's call it a weather API or something like that. Yeah.
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to put it over into the home. And in fact, let's do, notice there's a problem. We got to fix this in a second. FastAPI and say from FastAPI import, is it Jinja?
Autocomplete, man.
I know. There we go. So I think I'll just do it like this. This is not something I use that often because I have, in my opinion, something better that I use. But nonetheless, this is how it works. I think let's go like this equals templates. Yeah, like that. Then down here I can say return templates dot template response, and then what do we put in here? The name is going to be index.html. Well, that's a good spelling. HTML. And then the dictionary here, the context, we're going to need to pass over a request. This is needed. This is needed by underlying Jinja. So we're gonna have to get this to come over. And how do you do it? Well, now comes part of the type hint stuff. So what you do is you come over here and say, this thing takes a request. Well, what's FastAPI supposed to do with that? Is it because it's named that? No. You come over here and say it's a request object, and you import that from
I
Starlet,
love this.
and it sees, oh, there's an object or a parameter, and it's of type request. I have one of those. Here you go. Isn't that sweet?
I'm not a fan of magic names, magic order.
Yeah, you call this whatever you want, and it'll be fine, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Really, really nice. But you can see it's not loving this. So what we need to do is we need to come over here and say we have a not a blueprint, a router. Blueprint would be the Flask equivalent. Say FastAPI.API router. And what does it take? Don't think we need to pass anything to it. And this lets us break up, like we define all the routes, and then we say, hey, API thing, here's a few more that we got from somewhere else. And towards the question of how do I partition this into like little sub apps, you could build a package that uses the router and then use the router to plug in that part of the application in. So that's pretty cool.
That actually looks like something the little PyCharm elves could speed up a little bit, right?
And they sure could.
Some kind of intention to generate that
Yeah, exactly.
decorator.
Yeah, that'd be sweet, wouldn't it? Okay, this is not listed in the requirements, but it's a dependency. But let's go ahead and let PyCharm add it to the requirements for us. And there we go. All right, now this, if we run it, let's try to run it. It's probably going to be hating on it. Well, there's a couple of things. One, it's not found. So what we got to do is we got to go back here to our main and add those back in. So I need to go, let's do this. Let's do configure. Say API.include router. And we'll say from views, import home. And down here we can just say home.router. And we want to make sure we call this configure thing for now. But we only want to do this in development, but not in production. So let's do it like this. Use a little live template. How about that? Maybe like this. Keeping it short. Okay. Now let's see if it works again. So here's something that you'll run into with FastAPI. As you work with these sort of extended features, you have to install more dependencies. So for example, if I want to use Jinja templates, I got to install Jinja 2. If I want to serve static files, I got to include AIO files, which is an async IO files thing. Yeah. So let's go quick, throw that in here, install those, wait a moment. And when we're ready, we'll run again. Okay, off it goes. Now it's happy. One more thing. Let's go ahead and add those templates. Templates is what I called it. And we'll create an HTML file called index. And this will be umbrella. H1. Umbrella. One more time. Umbrella. Okay, so we've got our umbrella thing, right? We've sort of even added this whole, hey, it's a whole web framework, not just APIs, right? Well, so that's pretty neat. Now let's do let's go over to our weather API and let's actually start focusing on really building this API. This is what we're actually trying to build, but something that can sort of be driving you crazy is if you don't put some kind of home landing page, basically every request starts with not found 404. What do you want to type now? So that's a little funky. So I would say, I always kind of start by having this. And I wanted to show this to you because, once you're down this path, right, you're pretty much ready to write, like replace Flask or something like that with just a little bit of effort. Okay.
I'm glad you're showing this because I think most people think of FastAPI as API and that it's only usable if I've got a JavaScript single page application in front. But that's not the case. You can do the server-side rendering part.
Yeah.
In fact, you probably could use Chameleon as a templating language.
You could.
Is that
Where
possible,
did I put
Michael?
that? Why is this not showing up? I could. So I also added, this is sort of two things in one. I also added a decorator where if you want, you can just put a Chameleon decorator on there. And then someone else, I forgot their name, I'll see really quick, also created a Jinja one. So there's a friendlier decorator style. So here you just put FastAPI Jinja on there as well. So anyway, I think those are neat ways to work with it. Now let's go over here and build. Maybe not capital I, need an umbrella. Now let's see. This is probably going to require a city, which is a string. It's going to require a state, potentially, which is an optional string, because if you're in a place that doesn't necessarily use this concept of states, which could be none, and it's going to require a country, which is a string, but we could give it a default. I'll give it a default of US, potentially, just to show you can have a default. That happens to be where I am. Right? This is pretty cool. Yeah, Paul? We can do this, and actually, if we add this to our FastAPI bits, you'll see that it's going to use that stuff. So if I said like city was an integer, like it's a city code or something, if I pass in a string that is parsable to an integer, FastAPI will turn it to an integer, and I just get it as an integer.
Using standard syntax, standard names of built-in types. Exactly. And if we have time later to get into my little hobby horse about static analysis, this then feeds into the entire universe of other Python tooling. It isn't some stovepiped only works with Django model config syntax.
Yep.
MyPy will complain to you. PyCharm will give you red squigglies and things.
Exactly. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But let's go. First of all, we're going to need our route. So let's put this back. It's not actually an int. Let's go router equals FastAPI dot API router at router. And this could be a get or could be a post or whatever you want. And we're going to say this is going to be API / umbrella. Yeah. Give me just a second there. So what we could do is let's just return just the city for just a second, okay? And we're going to need to include this router and all the other routers it might have. So what do we call it? Weather API. PyCharm, help me. Thank you. Look at that. Okay, so we're going to include this. And actually, let's go to our template, and let's even tell PyCharm that this is a template directory. It says, oh, do you want help? We have no idea what language you like. Well, I like Chameleon, but what I'm going to tell it, nonetheless, is the template language. Where are you? Not there. There. It's hiding in the bottom. I want this to be Jinja. And so now it'll give me autocomplete for like the Jinja semantics. Okay, so I could even come down here and say /API /weather, umbrella, that's what I said. Question mark, city equals Portland. And this just will give us a nice little way to test this. So we click on this. Does it work? Yes, look at that. So now we got our city passed through, but watch what happens if I omit it. City is required. It's a strong type, not an optional type. And it doesn't have a default value, so it's required. That's part of my API as the function call, so why is that not part of the API as just consuming it? Isn't that cool? Yeah, so super, super neat. Let's go over here and do one more thing. I think we got time to make this happen. Let's go and define, like we could have this, and this is all well and good, but let's do something a little bit nicer. Let's take advantage of some of the Pydantic stuff. I'm going to come over and create a models folder, and into the models folder, I'm going to create a location class. Location. Now, this is a regular class, and it might have a city, which is a string. It might have a. Well, let's just nab those from over here, so they're the same.
Is this the Pydantic part?
What? Yes, of course it is. And we might have a state, and at this point we can swap their order, and we can, you know what, I really, really wish, I love Python, but I wish it had this like C# does. Come on.
Oh, you'll never ever get that. They argued about that in the past.
I'm sure they did.
You'll get a vertical bracket to replace union in 3.10, but they shut that down.
Yeah. I just don't like that I have to import it. I don't even mind that I have to type it.
Does the same thing.
Yeah, it's really clever. Okay, so if we had this, it'd be cool to say, well, we can take a location, wouldn't it? If we just said, you know, this is a location. That's sweet. Location is one of these, and we got to, of course, import that. No, stop. I didn't mean it. Import that, and then we just return our location. It knows how to convert that to a dictionary. Except for it doesn't love it. It says this thing is not a valid Pydantic field, right? So what it needs is it needs this to derive from a certain base class. Say this is a base model from Pydantic. And it says Pydantic is not in your requirements, but is a dependency. It's like indirectly there. So nonetheless, I'll put it there. Now, it's great. It's almost great. It seems like, oh, this is going to work. Yes, umbrella. No. That Pydantic thing only works when it's doing a post and that value, those values are coming from the body. Boo. I want him to come from the query string. I want him to come from, like, if I had just /Portland like this. Sadly, no. So we can use almost everything I love about FastAPI. This is just weird. But what I can use is I can use dependency injection to get the variable from the query string. And I could say this is a FastAPI.depends. That means go look somewhere else, I guess, is sort of the thinking. To me, that's a bizarro thing. Those dependency injection seems like something else. But nonetheless, there we are. Look at that. We got Portland, which we specified. We got state, which we didn't, but that was fine. And the U.S., which is required. This country, which is U.S., is required, but that's the default from the model. What do you think, Paul?
Lots of things to say on this.
All right, I think we probably got time to say something real quick if you like.
I have a big pile of questions. I don't think you want those yet. Do you want them yet?
We are close to umbrella, yes or no. So let's hold off on that really quick. And let's just so I can wrap it up, and then we can just freestyle a little bit, yeah?
Sure.
All right, so the last thing we need to do is, like, this is cool. I built an API that echoes. It echoes out what I sent into it. Something else is cool, honestly. Check this out. Docs. Spelling of docs is super hard, but I'm going to get there eventually. Check this out. I've got an API. It has two methods. One, the index. Wait, the index? Yeah, the index. That's bizarre. Hold on. So let's go back and fix that, right? We don't want that. I wanted you to see that it was there, but I don't really want it. I can say include in schema is false. This is not an API method. This is some other thing that I'm using. Okay, so if I rerun that. Okay, now we just have do I need an umbrella? Look how it like named it. That's kind of sweet. So if I say get, it says city, country, and the response type is, we have no idea. That's a bummer. But there is an idea. It actually has an idea. Response model is location. See that? Now that's not what it's going to be in the end, but what it is at the moment. So if I come back here and I refresh, check it out. There's the schema on the response type as well. So let's go and create one more model so I can sort of keep rolling with that and not have to delete it. We're going to have one more class. It's going to be umbrella status. I don't know. Class umbrella status base model. It's going to have a need bring umbrella, which is a bool. We're going to require that we have that value. And we're going to have a temp, which is a float, like that. And we'll return those things, actually, from our model. So we can set that there. The final thing to do is to implement this, right? So let's go over here, and it seems like it might get tricky or hard, but we're pretty close. A minute. URL is going to be, let's go over to my, there's a whole lot of stuff going on up here that I don't need. One of these. There we are. And let's just make them go away. Okay. So we want this. So the city is going to be something. The state is going to be something. And the country is going to be something. And Paul, are you a fan of F strings?
Quite a fan. And, you know, there's this little IDE that makes them all magical for you. They will actually give you an intention to convert it to an F string for you.
You know what I don't like about them? Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. What I don't like about them is I type, and then I'm like, oh, I want an F string. I go back. I put F. I go forward. I type.
Well, that's why you do Alt Enter and let PyCharm do the work for you.
You go over and you just type LO.
Yeah, that's right. It'll prompt you.
Whoops, did I do the right one? No.
You got to close it, I think.
I thought I just had to type location. Does it not do it? Come on. It normally does it. What's going on? Anyway, I do love how it normally does that, but why does it not? Anyway, city. And let's wrap this around. State. This is close. It's not quite what I want. This would be country. So what I actually want is I want to take this little bit right there. I want to do it from this direction, actually. And we'll say if location.state. So if you pass a state in, URL plus equals. Ampersand state, like that. There we go. We can just add it on. Otherwise, that's going to mess up the API. And then what we need to do is we need to call it. Now, I could just do requests. Like everybody says, oh, install request, request.get, you're good. Except for you just gave up like insane levels of scalability, right? Because what are we doing? We're waiting on the internet. Not on our server, not even on our database. We're waiting on the internet. The internet's quite scalable, all right? So if we put the word async here, we can do nearly unbounded amount of waiting at the same time, right?
You mean some days you wake up and Google login doesn't work?
Not even YouTube or Gmail, no. So we can come down here and I can go, I want to also use this thing called HTTPX. So you saw this in the list. I can install it and we wait. And this thing is super cool. And then I can also add, this one I really do need to add to the imports because it's not pre-included. So what I can do down here is I can say async with, that's a bizarre construct to me, but it is nice. HTTPX.async client as client. And then I write request code. So I say response equals HTTPX.get URL response dot raise for status, return response dot text, like that. No, I don't want to return. Sorry, I want to say not text. I want JSON. There you go. Just the data equals that. And then I just need to, well, let's just print out what data is real quick. Okay, so we can see. Have we done, actually, sorry, I did miss a little bit there. I was still in my request mode. Okay, so click the button again. Didn't love it. What do I get? Raise for status. What is my status? What has happened here? How about we print response.status? Is it status or status code? I don't remember. I think it's status code. Print response.text. Whoops.
They're saying there's a typo in the F string. URL is not correctly formatted. Move the city after the equal.
Oh, thank you, folks. What the error I'm getting then? Let's see the error though. But yeah, thank you very much.
And then you got the trailing equal.
Yeah, I got it.
Should drop into the debugger, man.
I should have dropped in the debugger. The error what we were getting was either malformed URL or probably validation that city was required and missing. So anyway, let's try again. Thank you, everyone. Hey, look. Object coroutine. There we go. Perfect. So it has no raise for status because this is an async method, so we need to await it. There we go. Now what are we doing? Something went wrong, but we got the answer. I don't know what was wrong. I just somehow messed it up. What is the error here? Oh, yeah, I just didn't set my umbrella is not filled out. Perfect. So did you notice we've got our data? We couldn't return whatever, but look, we've got our description. It's misty. I can look outside and tell you it's pretty much a 90% of what it is for like 6 months here. And what we want to look at is this category. So we're going to go with the weather, and there's a category. So we make it this far. I want to say weather equals, actually this needs to be above, data.get weather, and then category equals weather.get category. And let's make it sort of flow through there in case it's empty for some reason. And then we'll say none or not available, but as a string, okay? How about unknown or unavailable? All right, and then are you ready for the umbrella? So actually we could do, this, just to make it really clear when we're out of async mode, out of that HTTP mode. And I want to create an umbrella equals umbrella status. And what can we put in here? Bring umbrella equals bring, and temp equals, let's go back to our, so we got our weather, which has this, and then we have our wind. And then we also want the forecast temp. So forecast equals data.get forecast, and then the forecast is going to have a temp, and then we'll be all good. And if we don't know what that is, it's an empty dictionary, and then temp is forecast.get temp, and it's going to be 0. I don't know what to put here. And this will be the temp. Now this bring thing, what I need to check is bring equals category.lower.strip equal rain. How's that look? That look like a good implementation there?
But will it run?
But will it run? Well, if it does, we're shipping it. Okay.
Ding.
Dude,
Perfect
look at that.
compliment.
All right, let's go maybe Seattle. Let's go. I need to find a place that's raining. Someone help me out here. Where is it raining right now? Show me the weather map or forecast. I had not considered that I might not know where it's raining. I figured surely where I am would be effective. Let's see.
Vancouver.
Vancouver. All right. Vancouver, BC, right? Okay. So.
Paris.
All right. Vancouver and country equals CA. All right. Hold on. Let's see what we're getting from there. Let's go into the debugger. This is a whole nother challenge, Paul, I hadn't considered, is knowing where it's.
Here you are thinking about, async and event loops. And
The problem is it counts as mist. Let's just say it's also misty here. Like I always have the same weather as Vancouver. Let's change this to in the set rain or mist. Okay. There we go. Yes, we got to bring the umbrella. And you know where it's not raining? San Diego. It's not raining in San Diego. I live there.
Always a good bet.
It's a good, safe bet, yeah. Look at that. We did it. We built the API that says, should you bring your umbrella, yes or no? We could make this a little more clear because there was that confusion there. We could say the weather is a string, yeah? And then we could come over here and say weather equals category. Just put it in category. That way it says mist or snow or whatever. Yeah, it's clear in San Diego. But if we go back in Vancouver, it's mist. So we did it. 10 minutes. And now we have our own mashup a la 1999. What do you think, Paul?
And I like that from the perspective of complaining about validation problems and things like that, it was using kind of semantics that are now built into Python rather than invented somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I think I just picked up on is if I say new data equals umbrella dot dictionary, a straight dictionary, and I return that, I think, and I take away the weather. Yeah. So look, it even tells me that my contract with the return value couldn't be created. So it actually created it to converted it to an umbrella status because of what I had up here, even though I just returned a dictionary. And another thing to notice that's pretty killer, like we don't really need to do that. Return umbrella. Another thing to notice, if I go straight to the data, what is that right there? That is not a string. That is a float. And I'm pretty sure even if I said that this is a string of the temperature, what we're going to get is, still, it's still, Pydantic is saying it was a string, but it has to be a float, so it's a float. So all that type conversion and stuff. Now, obviously, we don't need to do that because it came back from the other API as a float and whatnot, but cool, right? All right, well, I didn't expect the hardest part of this thing to be figuring out where it's raining in the world, but here we have it. So I think this is pretty slick, man. I mean, yeah. I wouldn't write it like this. I would do one more thing. I would do, I'd come over here and I'd factor this out. I'd create a services, and I'd call this, I don't know, I'm out of names, live weather service or whatever. and I would put this bit into it, you know, something like maybe even this. I'm not sure, but certainly would put something like this over here. Async def get live report location as that. And then I'd say up here, services, import, data equals await this location. There we go. So now it's, less, like we're not doing the API calls right in here. Like we're just sort of, that way that would be easier to test or easier to mock or whatever. And let's just make sure I didn't break it. I did. What did I do? Oh, I think I forgot to return anything. That would help. Return data. None does not have a get. There we go. Cool, right? So I wouldn't like jam it all into that one view method here, right? That seems wrong. And you could even do one more PyCharm. Control T, not rename. Control T inline. There we go. All right, I think we're good. Questions?
All right. Yeah, we'll switch over to our very long list of questions. Note to all, this webinar is going to go a little longer than an hour.
Well, we got the app built with an hour. Well, the Q&A may run over, huh?
Yeah, you were perfectly on time. How about that? All right. Lots of questions at various levels of depth and things like that. Small detail, someone brought up in the chat, you can actually use WSGI mounting to add Flask to a FastAPI.
Yes, you could. Well, you could use WSGI mounting to add any WSGI thing. You could add Django, you could add Flask, you could auld other FastAPIs. Yeah. That's right. That's the thing that I was talking about, but I have no idea how to do it. I'm sure it's simple. Yeah,
and it kind of brings up a good point that was also mentioned several times in the chat was, we talked about this being built on Pydantic. It's also a lot of the stuff that you just showed is actually Starlet. Could you talk about that real quick?
Starlet certainly deserves huge credit. This is a programming interface on top of Starlet's functionality, really. It's like Pydantic plus Starlet. So for sure, Tom Christie and crew over at Encode need credit for that as well.
Okay. This is one uniquely designed to appeal to you and me and our inner pyramid self.
Yeah, got it. Sounds
There's
good.
a complaint about having to passing like a global database down, always passing, and as opposed to presumably having some magical thread local that just appears upon demand and you can never debug it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that pattern of always passing things in?
So like the dependency injection thing, sort of. Yeah. So what you can do, I haven't used it extensively. I'm not sure where you register, but you could say this function takes like a dictionary, or not a database implementation, like a service or it takes something that like creates a SQL Alchemy session or something like that. And, it should get passed in through that dependency injection, which is pretty neat. It definitely makes testing easier because you create a mock one of those and then just pass it in.
Indeed. And then it's a common pattern in Pyramid to have pretty skinny views and move things out and put them on the request object or something like that. Okay, two things that I really desperately want to talk about. PyCharm has some unique facilities to help in FastAPI.
Yeah, I didn't talk about the plugins, right? I mean, we probably saw them, but I didn't touch them.
Before getting the plugins, we'll go over a couple of things that are built in. Instead of going over to the browser all the time and hitting refresh, there's something called HTTP files where you can edit a file in this kind of curl-like language and have the play button. And it issues a REST request, and it's got all kinds of facilities to do the things that you would want to do for testing front ends. So that's a pretty cool thing. If you have a database backend, there are questions for you, Michael. Does your course use a database?
No, it uses an API like this.
Okay, cool. All right.
I considered having one, but I didn't because it's like another level of stuff you got to set up.
It's not
right?
FastAPI,
Yeah,
so we'll get to the thing about database in a second. But if you do have a database, PyCharm has the database tool that lets you browse everything and autocomplete language, stuff like that. But
it even has MongoDB integration these days, which thank you.
Indeed. It was the Michael Kennedy feature.
Thank you.
That's the way we referred to it internally.
Perfect.
The couple of things, though, that people might not know about is community plugins that we helped the people write. In one case, we actually put an extra like API kind of plug point in for them. The first one is from Kuadayano, who did a Pydantic plugin. So do you want to talk about that? Do we need to go back to your screen to show a URL?
I use it. I don't know what I'm getting from Pydantic's plugin versus
so that's right.
what I'm getting from
the.
So you help me out and tell me what I get by doing that. I know I want it. I just don't know why.
The idea here, and this is a riff that I want to, if we have time later, get onto about modern Python and static analysis, is this information is used to validate incoming data, right? But it can also be used to give you autocomplete and red squigglies. Now, an issue is like in PyCharm, we support data classes and we'll do autocomplete and give you red squigglies when you call something incorrectly. But the base model in Pydantic isn't a data class. So PyCharm needs to be taught that this is one of those things that has special semantics. If you use the data class support in Pydantic, out of the box, PyCharm is only looking at Python's built-in data class. And since Python doesn't really have protocols or interfaces, we can't really say that is also pretending to be a data class. So he and his plugin taught PyCharm to do all of these cool static analysis, autocomplete, refactoring, code generation things for you. Go search for PyCharm Pydantic plugin, install it. He's done a great job on that plugin, release after release after release, engaging people, closing issues, staying current with the latest PyCharm releases. He also has a plugin for poetry.
Oh, nice.
It recently went 1.0. And he's also been plugging, adding features and closing bugs, and we had to do some work to help him on that. So those kinds of plugins are really interesting. And there's another plugin that people can get, I'm almost positive they don't know about. If you search for, what would it be? IntelliJ OpenAPI specifications. There's an OpenAPI Swagger plugin that brings in this new universe of endpoints. And it's weird, man. It's so cool. We will know the things you're defining and then auto-complete them in other languages. For example, in JavaScript, you'll get auto-completion on URL strings to fetch based on the models that you've defined. We have some work to do in 2021. Stay tuned on that. But this kind of gets into a question that came up. Depends. Actually, two questions. Depends and return type. Response type. Someone noted, and I agree with them, they shouldn't be using depends. They should be using the new Python annotated thing, which does have a backport for earlier Python versions. Have you ever heard of this thing?
No, my type hint stuff is all focused on 3.5, 3.6 and above. So I haven't really done it. I think depends makes sense there. Dependency injection is I have a dependency of the application. I don't want to pass around. I don't want to make global like you said. I want to pass around, but I want the trouble of instantiating it each time. I want it just when you need one of these, here's where it comes from.
Sure.
Arguments to a function don't seem like that to me. So that's a little weird.
It's interesting though, because it's kind of done in other places where like for Django models, you have this magical config class that you sprinkle in to explain to the system its dependencies, data dependencies. Annoted's pretty cool. Sorry, I know a lot about this.
Tell us about it.
Like this weekend, spent 10 hours in my code on writing a dependency injector that uses annotated. It's a way to say, here's the type information, but also here's some extra metadata that custom tools might use.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what FastAPI is doing. And so it's got a generic called depends when really it could be using this annotated thing. Any idea why you have to do return type instead of just getting the function annotation response value, response type?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing as well, right? Like what I expected is I can use the inbound arguments, the function parameters, and it'll detect those. It doesn't detect them for Pydantic models, but if they were bare arguments like city equals of city code equals float, then it would. I thought arrow umbrella status would have some influence, like the type annotation response type would have some, but it's ignore. It has no meaning. You have to say response model.
I'll have to go dig into that and see. They probably have a good reason for that.
There probably is a good reason. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Maybe it's because they want to support versions before Python 3.6.
But it depends. 3.6 is a minimum requirement for FastAPI.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know.
Next one's easy for you. Why Chameleon? Why not just Jinja 2, Michael? 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. My screen's not here, so it's fine. I don't need it. So I'll do this with words. What I really, really, really dislike about Jinja, about Django, about other similar types of frameworks, syntaxes, is you write broken HTML. If I were to go over to some tool that doesn't know what Jinja is, and I say, this is an HTML file, it says, well, this is entirely broken. I have no idea what to do. I give it to a designer in like a web design workflow. They're like, I have no idea what to do with this junk. Like this won't load into my tooling. Chameleon is 100% valid HTML with some extra stuff that gets ignored, right? I mean, you might say the attribute tal doesn't make sense on a div, but beyond, it's, the browser's job or behavior is when I see an attribute I don't know, I just ignore it, right? So it feels like Vue. It feels like I can write valid HTML, and it just happens to be that it gets expanded out or has more meaning. Some people, this is my guess. I have no basis for this. I believe their feeling is, I don't really like this because in those other ones, I can like write full on Python code in my Vue and do whatever I want. To me, that's a bug, not a feature. You should
tell a little historical story about that.
Yeah, man. You shouldn't be writing that code in your Vue. It should go somewhere else. Factor your application, right?
Yep. Chameleon comes from Zope page templates, which is that template attribute language syntax. And in 1999, Luciano Ramallo and I independently at the same time invented that. I was on vacation. I wanted something that worked with Dreamweaver, of all things. He wanted something that was parsable with a regular XML parser. And so it's interesting that your interpretation of why you give a bleep about it was the original reason that we came up with, that you could walk over to some other tool.
It's beautiful. I can look at it. I can write HTML, and then I can make it dynamic. All the other ones, you're like, oh, did you forget to end 4? Like, why am I writing end 4?
Yeah, right.
If you want me to write Python, make me indent it or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was actually an implementation in JavaScript of Chameleon or Zope page templates. Someone asked a question about nested URLs, nested routes or whatever in FastAPI. Can you do it?
Nested URLs, like the router has some part of a URL and then maybe like a sub URL.
It's almost like traversal. You grab a person, and then you grab what department they're in, and then you grab what city that.
Oh, I see what you're asking.
So /people/Michael/department/marketing. I had to do that to you.
Yeah, let me check. Wow, let me just check something real quick here. I know you can't see it. It doesn't matter. It's just gonna. I'm pretty sure this works, but let me check it before I say. That's what I love about programming. You don't have to debate. You run it. It says yes or no. So what you can do on this is not exactly what you're asking. I don't believe. So I'm going to say probably no in that regard. But what you can do is on those routers, you can put a URL prefix. So for example, on mine, I said directly in the router.get URL, it was /API/umbrella. What I could have done is I could have gone to the router and said, everything in this file is a /API, and then just put /umbrella /that. So you can sort of, as you define the files, you can create like a hierarchy as sort of, but I know it's like, not in a navigate the data sense that I know of, right? Like not like, well, I got the customer, then the customer has orders. So I do /customer/7/orders/ like, I don't know anything about, I have never seen anything like that.
Christian Mueller in chat saying that it's path params. You can do /path/ curly brackets, whatever, / another path.
You can do that. I don't know how that traverses data objects, right?
Okay, next question.
It may, I just don't, like, I just have no idea.
Sure. So we've run, I think there might have been some questions in the last couple of minutes that I didn't get caught up on. The kind of point that I wanted to close a little bit with and riff on, if that's okay, is the whole static analysis part.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about type. Semi-static typing.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is, you know, FastAPI is hotter than the surface of the sun. Yay, FastAPI. And one of the two big killer features is Pydantic. And the reason to give a crap about Pydantic is type hinting.
Yes.
And so this is a case where you eat your vegetables, but you actually get a direct, immediate benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Yeah. And there's, go ahead, sorry.
No, someone was walking, I just told him to.
Okay. And there's more of that's beginning to happen in the world of Python. And Python feels a little bit different than a few years ago. And there's still this tension in the world of Python with these people saying, leave all that crap out.
If I wanted to write Java,
read my code.
Paul, if I wanted to write Java, I would just go get Eclipse and I'd be happy. Or IntelliJ and be happy.
Says every rage tweet ever.
Yeah, exactly.
There are 5 million entries in Reddit that say that.
Yeah.
But this is a case of you get the benefit from it. You get something that has broader tooling support. You could point MyPy at it. It would find places that you messed up. Most importantly, smart editors give you red squigglies.
Yes.
And from a developer experience,
even if you don't care about even if you don't care about that, did you see how quickly I wrote this without ever going to the documentation?
Sure.
It doesn't mean I know everything. I don't know if it's a lowercase p, lowercase I, or capital API. It's code generation plus code validation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And your tools, like us, don't have to be taught these little silos of, hey, you know, in a Django thing, over there's this thing called the view, and they're usually connected by this magical string, and that's how we will find out and do static analysis and do red squigglies. Yeah. Instead, there's this common system that all kinds of tools can run on and give you the equivalent of red squigglies. And I wanted to bring that up because of Pydantic, but this benefit for stop doing the get off my lawn, embrace the Death Star of type hinting, because good things are coming, man. And it's not just you get validation on your incoming HTTP data. It's a developer experience, which is more positive. And with this, it's going to extend into OpenAPI too.
Yeah, and it is. And Lucas Schlenga spoke about their work at Instagram, converting everything to type annotations and finding tons of bugs and getting rid of them.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I saw this freaky presentation at PyCon back when there was a about finding security holes via static analysis and type hinting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm not smart enough to know anything other than it was pretty badass.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So just trying to make a pitch for this. lots of places that this meme will begin to appear, and your tooling will help you write better code faster based on doing a little bit of extra work.
Yeah, there's some part. Let me see, where is this thing? There, I believe it's the validation decorator. There's a part of Pydantic that was recently in beta. And what it does is it actually it's called a validation decorator. And what it does is it puts runtime verification into those type-ins.
Uh-huh.
So you could actually throw this decorator onto it, and it'll say, no, you said it took an int, and you passed a string. I'm not sure if I would run in production with this, but it might be like, okay, I've got an API, and at the boundaries, I might wrap it in some decorators, see if we can track down those bugs and get everything figured out, and then take them back away.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
you pulled up,
got any closing
right
points you want to make about your course or about FastAPI?
Sure. I can say something about the course. Whoops. If I don't go past the end of my presentation. People can check out the course. I wrote a 4.5 hour course that I feel is the 80% case of what most people need to get started and be productive with FastAPI. It's over at talkpython.fm/FastAPI. And it goes all the way from building some kind of interesting app that's similar to what we did here, but with a lot more digging into the details about things like Pydantic and so on. And then we actually deploy that out on DigitalOcean, on Ubuntu. And so sort of end to end, start from idea, get it running in the cloud.
All right. And is it part of any promotions that you're doing?
Not currently. It was for Black Friday, but now it's
okay.
Now it's not.
All right, cool. All right, let's go ahead and switch back over to my screen, and we will go ahead and get this wrapped up. Thanks, Michael. As always, I could just listen to your silky smooth voice all day long, which is okay because there's Talk Python to Me podcast.
Yeah, I guess also really quickly, there's also an interview with Sebastian Ramirez about FastAPI around 284. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it's episode 284-ish.
Around what month of?
That would be about 2.5 months ago.
2.5. Oh, perfect. All right.
Yeah, so it's pretty fresh.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us, Michael, about this, giving us a real quick working introduction, answering the blizzard of questions. Everybody, go take a look at his training course. Exceptionally well done. All of his courses are exceptionally well done. If any of you have any questions later, don't hesitate to contact us by email, by social media. I'd like to hear from any of you about your thoughts about FastAPI, about what PyCharm's doing with these kinds of things. We had a lot planned in 2021, so now's a great time to let us know what you think. If you'd like to get more information on PyCharm, go to our website, jetbrains.com/PyCharm. If you haven't already, check out our blog where you can find up-to-date information about news, our recent release, for example, other kinds of events such as this. We already know what we're doing for the January webinar, for the February webinar, etc. So you'll be able to find out those things in addition to educational resources such as this webinar. We'd love your feedback on this webinar, this cool new format where I get to hang out with Michael Kennedy and see his face while he's talking. Feel free to contact us on Twitter in the after webinar survey, which we will email you in a bit. That's all for us today. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for staying to the end. Hope you have a nice day.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for coming. See you later.